Dictator, drug trafficker, military officer, and president were some of the names referred to the Sire Bourtese in Suriname. From conducting a coup and massacres, this is how Bourtese remained in power. A quick summary about his early life. Cesar Delano Bourtese was born on October 13, 1945 in Domburg, Suriname. For potential education opportunities, Bourtese moved with his aunt to the capital Paramaribo. She had never finished school. Once Bourtese was 23, he moved to the Netherlands to enlist in the armed forces, becoming a non-commissioned officer and later assigned in Germany. 2 years later, Bourtese married and had two children named Peggy and Dino. Up until then, Suriname was still a colony of Netherlands. However, due to increasing autonomy of witnessing South America countries gaining independence, and Netherlands' fear and stability with mass migration into the country, in November 1975, Suriname gained its independence. Hearing the news and possessing the experience, Bourtese left the Netherlands to establish the Surinamese army, becoming the chairman in the military union. 5 years passed, and Bourtese and 15 other sergeants became dissatisfied with the current ruling of the Prime Minister of Suriname, Henk Aaron, due to the economic depression, corruption, and arresting critics. Therefore, they overthrew Aaron through a violent military coup, where they gave their title as the Sergeant Coup. In Dutch, they were also known as Groep van 16, or Group of 16, very Dutch-like. After the coup, Bourtese was titled the chairman of the National Military Council of Suriname, which basically made him the dictator of Suriname. The population of Suriname widely supported the takeover, as the group advertised going against corruption and unemployment. However, no steps or plan were made to reach the desired goals and promises. Therefore, when nothing was projected correctly, social dissatisfaction increased. And in fact, evening curfews, heavy news censorship, and banned political parties were made to restrict freedom of views. On December 7th and 8th of 1982, 15 Surinamese men criticized Bourtese's military dictatorship. Ordinary men in the field of law, journalism, professor, and military disagreed with the authority of Bourtese. Therefore, they were arrested and shot dead. Reasoning behind the arrests were due to them supposedly plotting to overthrow the government, and the shooting was due to them trying to flee Fort Zeelandia, a government military station. Bourtese stated that he was not present in the killings and were made by the commander Paul Bhagwandas, deny any involvement. 4 years after the December murders, Bourtese repeated his crimes, causing the Moyana massacre. Moyana is a village of Maroon descendants inside Suriname, and within them were a jungle commander, being led by Ronnie Brunswick, that used to be Bourtese's former bodyguard. 70 military units were sent by the government into Moyana, as it was believed that Brunswick maintained his influence the strongest over there. So for over 4 hours, houses were burned and villages shot down when encountered. The main casualties were primarily women and children, with at least 39 deaths being reported. The surviving Maroons fled to the neighbor French Guiana, living in refugee camps until the early 1990s. Once France and Suriname signed peace for the Maroons, most returned back to Suriname. Neither the December murders or Moyana massacre, Bourtese apologized. In 1985, the government lifted the ban on opposition parties, and civilian rule began to apply. 2 months later, elections were made, and an opponent of Bourtese named Ramsewak Shankar was finally elected as president in 1988. Bourtese still had military power remaining as an army commander, and continued murdering and disappearing his opponents through government efforts. Up until returning from a personal trip to Ghana and Switzerland, he was stopped by at the airport and was resigned on the spot. As an act of retaliation, the next day, Bourtese ordered the newly acting army commander, Ivan Granost, to call Shankar and force his resignation, making this known as the telephone coup. After leaving politics, Bourtese started his drug trafficking business by the name of Suricata in the 1980s and 1990s. From Suriname and Brazil, large amounts of cocaine were being trafficked into Europe, especially into the Netherlands. It was in July 16, 1999, that a partner of Bourtese, Patrick Van Loon, was suspectively bribed by the Dutch to convict Bourtese to 11 years for trafficking over 434 kilograms of cocaine into Netherlands. By never returning to Europe since 1999, Europol had since have an international warrant for his arrest. With the democratic government, Bourtese tried returning to power in the 2010 elections. His coalition mega combination became the largest bloc in the National Assembly with 23 of the 51 seats. needing at least 3 more seats to gain absolute majority in parliament to become president. Bourtese cooperated with opposing parties, reaching over 36 seats, winning with his vice president Amirali. Bourtese remained in power in the 2015 elections, again with 25 seats won, yet not much is mentioned about his accomplishment in that period. It was until 2020 that Bourtese announced his retirement from politics. Free universal healthcare, free school meals, and required minimum wage were introduced during his presidency. In exchange, there was budget deficits, and inflation devalued the Surinamese dollar. By February 2012, Ruben Rosendahl, one of the military suspects that were responsible with the December murders, came forward with the truth to have his name not covered with lies after getting a kidney disease that would kill him. Ruben had a testimony in 2010 that defended the cover-up and masking Bourtese's innocence. And the new testimony, Ruben confirms that Bourtese personally killed 2 of the 15 victims. Pretending that it was supposed to eliminate Bourtese from the political arena, Bourtese's political party created the Amnesty Act that protected Bourtese from getting guilty from the December murder investigation. During the dictatorship, open ties with Soviet Union, Cuba, and North Korea were made, even though having no communist belief. Netherlands suspended development aid to Suriname, injuring the economy, and the main export product, bauxite, took heavy devaluation. Due to this, several uprisings happened, sometimes being led by army or civilians. In the wake of the U.S. invasion of Grenada that happened around the time of 1983, Suriname feared of U.S. aggression, therefore expelled Cuban diplomats. After the amnesty law, the Netherlands stopped their €20 million aid that was set aside for Suriname. The stubborn Bourtese didn't want to show any regret, stating, "I never asked you for €20 million. We have economic reserves for almost $800 million. Not showing remorse, the Dutch Labour Party increased sanctions by adding a ban on European travel for all Surinamese parliamentarians who approved the law. Remember the amnesty law mentioned earlier? In 2016, it was lifted by a military court, and by 2019, Bourtese was convicted to 20 years in imprisonment. On January 12, 2024, a manhunt was launched against Bourtese after failing to turn himself in. Before getting convicted, Bourtese would routinely check up in Cuba and stay for a month-long stay after undergoing undisclosed surgery. Ultimately, he died at the age of 79, where he was hiding in an unknown location. Autopsy later found he was suffering from liver fibrosis that is caused by chronic alcohol consumption. News outlet reported his hiding spot to be in the Kopi Nature Reserve, 50 kilometers from Paramaribo, where his body was moved into his residence. Although the president of that period, Chan Santohiki, announced no period of national mourning of state funeral, his cadaver was paraded and later cremated. An extra informational story is about the son of Bourtese, Dino Delano Bourtese. In an attempt to enter Curaçao, Netherlands, using a false passport in 2003, Dino was arrested on charges of large-scale theft of weaponry. By 2005, Dino was sentenced to 8 years in prison for international drug and armed trafficking, a very light sentence in my personal opinion. In 2013, that same year when Dino was released, you imagine that he would want to avoid repeating his past. Yet he was arrested by the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, in Panama. Dino was then extradited to the US and taken again to New York City, Manhattan, receiving the max sentence of 16 years in 2015.